It's already well established at this point that the Anoa'i family is one of the most decorated in wrestling, easily comparable to the likes of the Harts, the Rhodes, or even the McMahons. That said though, in modern history, so much attention has been paid to the successes of The Rock and Roman Reigns that it's easy to forget just how high another member of that family rose, that being Rikishi. Yes, the big man has had a hell of a career himself, going from his early days of being a tag team undercard act all the way to the main event at the heights of the Attitude Era. And whether it was as a hated heel or beloved babyface, he was always highly appreciated amongst fans. So join us today as we take a deep dive into his entire career journey in You Look Fly Today, The Rikishi Story. Salofa Fatu was born on October 11, 1965 in San Francisco, California, where he was of course raised as a member of the Anoa'i family. This meant that while being an American by birth, he was very much a Samoan by heritage, and it was a culture strong in his family and community connections that he would carry with him as he grew up in the Sunnydale projects of the Visitacion Valley. There, he would find an early interest in amateur wrestling, something which shouldn't come as a surprise given his lineage, and by the time he was about to leave school, he even had some early aspirations of taking this further into a full-blown career. Things changed, however, when in 1982, while he was just 17 years old, Salofa was wounded during a drive-by shooting, this resulting in him legally dying for 3 minutes while on the operating table afterwards and then having to remain in a hospital for 2 months to recover. After this went down, his mother, who now feared for the boy's safety, sent him out of state to live with her brothers Afa and Sika, more commonly known to wrestling fans as the Wild Samoans. And while living with them, Salofa would start getting trained in the ways of professional wrestling, something which he was quick to pick up as he made it his aim to catch up to his brother Sam, who was by that point already working for WWE alongside the likes of the legendary tough man Haku. Before he could get there though, he would first have to earn his spot by working his way up the ranks of the indie circuit, making his in-ring debut in 1985 as Prince Alofa for Lutte International Wrestling in Montreal, all before jumping over to Puerto Rico and teaming with his real-life cousin Samula Anoa'i to form the Samoan SWAT team, a couple of high-flying babyfaces who would also utilize the Samoan Savage gimmick so prevalent in the industry back in those days. And as a team, the cousins would work extensively in Puerto Rico's World Wrestling Council for the next couple of years, finding a lot of success there as they eventually became the promotion's Caribbean Tag Team Champions in November of 1987, this coming just a month before they moved on to new pastures in the form of Fritz Von Erich's legendary World-Class Championship Wrestling in Texas, where they would have a number of high-profile matches against the Von Erich family. By August 12, 1988, the Samoan SWAT team had even conquered that promotion's tag team division too, when they beat Kerry and Kevin Von Erich to win the WCWA World Tag Team titles, from there going on to trade them back and forth with Michael Hayes and Steve Cox for a while. During this period, they even briefly became double champions when, while still holding the World Tag Team belts, they were also able to reign victorious over Hollywood John Tatum and Jimmy Jack Funk to take home the WCWA Texas Tag Team titles as well. That said though, by the beginning of 1989, both Salofa and his cousin would end up leaving WCCW behind, vacating both championships as they set their sights on conquering new worlds once more, signing with Jim Crockett Promotions soon after, where they would quickly establish themselves as a major force by beating the Midnight Express at April 2nd's Clash of the Champions 6, Ragin' Cajun. Then from there, taking part in the 1989 War Games match, teaming with Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Jimmy Garvin to fight the union of the Road Warriors, the Midnight Express, and Dr. Death Steve Williams. And so by the time the autumn of that year came and they had been fully established as a team, the cousins expanded by taking on a new manager in the form of the Big Kahuna Oliver Humperdinck, as well as a new team member in Salofa's real-life brother Sam, then going by the gimmick of the Samoan Savage. Initially, this didn't go well, however, and after suffering a number of high-profile losses over the next few months, it took the two brothers eventually deciding to go out on their own for things to start working. Now calling themselves the New Wild Samoans, the Fatu siblings would enter into that year's Iron Team tournament, putting on an impressive showing and rebuilding their aura as killers, all before leaving WCW altogether in the summer of 1990 and using their newly recovered status as big-time players to work all around the world, going as far as Europe and Japan while often teaming with their other cousin Kokina Maximus, who would later find more fame as Yokozuna. The three even won the Universal Wrestling Association's Trios Tag Team titles together in 1991, and then later headlined the Mexican company's 16th anniversary show, showing just how big a deal they had become in that market. And all of this would soon catch the attention of the biggest player in the game, as in 1992, Vince McMahon, looking for a new heel big man team, signed all three of them up to contracts, repackaging Kokina as the aforementioned Yokozuna while keeping the two brothers together and naming them the Head Shrinkers. And the Head Shrinkers would prove to be just as formidable while in WWE as they had been elsewhere, quickly getting into a feud with the Natural Disasters after they cost them the tag team titles, then from there spending the next 3 years working matches alongside the likes of High Energy, the Smoking Guns, and Men on a Mission, sporadically challenging for the tag team titles but never being able to win them. In lieu of this, however, Fatu, as Solofa was then being named, would get a chance to challenge Bret Hart for the WWE World Heavyweight title on the March 1, 1993 episode of Raw, a rarity for someone who had been placed in the tag team division and, despite ultimately losing the match, a great opportunity for the up-and-comer to show the boss what he could do when forced to fly solo. Of course, they did end up having a good match that night, but then when you're in the ring with the Hitman, it's nigh on impossible not to do so. That's not a put-down of Fatu, however, because he more than held his own against the champ, this surely helping the boss to realize the potential he had with him as a singles competitor. That inevitable singles run wouldn't come quite yet, however, because the Head Shrinkers would continue to team throughout the majority of 1994, even turning babyface in the spring as they took on Captain Lou Albano as their manager and defeated the Quebecers to become the WWE Tag Team Champions for the first and only time on the May 2nd edition of Raw. And this title run would continue all the way up until that August, at which point they would drop the straps to Shawn Michaels and Diesel, the reason for this soon becoming apparent, as Samu would end up leaving the company to deal with a number of nagging injuries he was suffering from. From there then, he would be replaced by Sione, the former Barbarian, as both he and Fatu were rebranded as the new Head Shrinkers. Unfortunately though, this new union wouldn't have the same levels of success, and so, after only appearing sporadically on TV for the rest of the year in the first half of 1995, they would eventually disband when Sione quit to go join WCW in June of the latter year, this resulting in Fatu being pulled from TV as the company tried to come up with something new for him. 1 month later, and that new direction would become apparent to all as he returned as a singles performer who portrayed himself as a streetwise positive role model, filming a number of vignettes in his old San Francisco neighborhood where he touched upon his tough upbringing, pleading with the kids watching to stay in school and keep away from drugs. This character would unofficially become known as Make a Difference Fatu, and would see him find some early success as a full-time singles competitor when he started racking up a number of victories against enhancement talent, usually featuring on the likes of the weekly Superstars TV show. Sadly though, despite both his and the company's best efforts, the gimmick would struggle to get over with fans. And so, by 1996, he was regularly being booked to lose to more popular superstars like Steve Austin, Vader, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, rarely picking up any major wins of his own. By May of that year then, the whole thing was dropped, and Solofa was again taken off TV and repackaged, this time reappearing soon thereafter as the Sultan. Now, the Sultan was an interesting character, let's just say, another old racial stereotype that portrayed the San Francisco native as an Arabic masked wrestler who never spoke on account of his tongue allegedly having been cut out. The gimmick was dead on arrival, of course, but WWE did try their best to get it over by giving him two well-traveled managers in the form of Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik. And the Sultan would make a few notable appearances over the next couple of years, most famously challenging his cousin Rocky Maivia for the Intercontinental Championship at WrestleMania 13. But all in all, this was never going to be anything even coming close to a main event level gimmick, and eventually it would also be dropped, with Salofa being pulled from TV in 1998 so he could be sent to Dory Funk's Funkin' Conservatory Wrestling School for additional training. WWE feeling at the time that the problem wasn't the terrible characters he was being asked to portray, but that he didn't have enough skill in the ring to make them work. Of course, this was pretty far from reality, as the former tag team champion had more than enough skill in the ring to get over if he was given something good to work with. Luckily for him then, he would get just that, when on the November 13, 1999 episode of Metal, he was reintroduced to the fans as Rikishi Fatu, an ass-kicking Samoan who took on all comers and, more often than not, beat them to a pulp. Initially, plans were for there to be some sumo leanings to the character, with the name Rikishi itself even being a reference to the world of sumo. Eventually, though, this and the surname of Fatu were dropped, and Rikishi, who had by now put on a lot of mass and dyed his hair bleach blonde, began feuding with Viscera for a while before eventually forming an alliance with Too Cool, the team of dancing b-boys Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay. And this union would prove to be the most popular thing the big man would ever do while he was part of the WWE, because the three of them ended up creating a magical chemistry, quickly making themselves one of the most popular mid-card acts in the company as fans eagerly awaited their post-match dance after every victory, Rikishi showing off his impressive moves each time they did it. So popular had the act become by the time of the turn of the millennium, they had even gotten a chance to have a dance break in the middle of the 2000 Royal Rumble, this being one of the best comedy spots of the Attitude Era. But of course, for as much as there were comedic elements to the gimmick, Rikishi was also able to show that he could be a legitimate force too, as in that very same match, he managed to eliminate 7 people, with it taking a further 6 to eventually get him over the top rope and out of the ring. And with Too Cool by his side, he continued on dominating the upper mid-card for the majority of that year, feuding with the likes of Edge, Christian, and Kurt Angle, and even at one point winning the Intercontinental Championship after beating Chris Benoit on the June 22nd episode of SmackDown. After that accolade, the big man then set his sights on even greater prizes, qualifying for that year's King of the Ring tournament and making it all the way to the finals before ultimately being defeated by Angle. And following this loss, he would also end up dropping his IC title to Val Venus, but it did little to slow his momentum as, whether he was delivering his trademark stink face, basically rubbing his ass into the face of a poor, incapacitated opponent, or jumping from the top of a steel cage in an allusion to Superfly Jimmy Snuka, he remained popular with fans. In fact, by October of that year, many felt it was time to move Rikishi up to the main event picture, having him be a top-tier babyface who could feud with the likes of Triple H. It was a surprise to everyone then when the California native would indeed reach this level, just as a heel instead. Yes, as part of an ongoing storyline which began the year prior when Steve Austin was run over by a mystery assailant, writing him off TV so he could go get neck surgery, both the Rattlesnake and the show's then general manager Mick Foley had been conducting an investigation into who had committed the crime. Many at the time expected the reveal to be a major heel like the aforementioned Triple H or even Kurt Angle. They were taken aback then when it was instead revealed to be Rikishi who had carried out the hit and run, reasoning that he did it for The Rock, as he wanted his Samoan brethren to get a chance to be WWE's top guy. For someone who had spent the last year being a smiling, dancing babyface, this turn was pretty jarring to say the least, and the explanation didn't really make much sense as he had never been aligned with the Great One on TV prior to this. Still, despite the negative reaction, WWE pushed on with the story, setting up a match between the new heel and Stone Cold at the October 22nd No Mercy pay-per-view. A match that would pretty much just see the Rattlesnake deliver an extended beatdown to his opponent, then leave him for dead before things could ever really formally get started. And this was symbolic of how dead the story had left the Rikishi character, with the whole thing soon being retconned to suggest that Triple H had been the mastermind of the entire thing all along, and that the Samoan had only been a pawn in his game. Now, having been well and truly made to look like a geek instead of the mega heel he was supposed to be then, the former Intercontinental Champion tried to recover when he cost The Rock the WWE title, turning on him too in a moment that made even less sense, as it was supposedly him he had been fighting for all along, according to the storyline. Nevertheless, the two men would end up having a showdown at the following month's Survivor Series, and if there was ever any doubt about who the more important one was at this point, Rocky would end up getting a fairly easy win after 11 minutes and 19 seconds. After that, Rikishi's main event push lasted for one more month when he became part of the famous six-man Hell in a Cell match at the Armageddon pay-per-view in December. That night, however, sharing the ring with a cavalcade of legends such as Steve Austin, The Rock, The Undertaker, Triple H, and Kurt Angle, the big man stuck out like a sore thumb and was definitely the weak link in terms of star power. That said, he did manage to get the most memorable spot of the entire thing when, towards the end of the bout, he was chokeslammed off the top of the cell by The Undertaker, landing safely on the back of a truck filled with wood chips in a moment that was thankfully far safer than the iconic bump Mick Foley had taken 2 years prior. From there, though, it was clear that the main event push had not worked. Rikishi did have the talent and connection with the fans to carry this out, of course, it was just that the heel turn had killed all his momentum and left fans not caring anymore. With this in mind then, he was bumped back down to the upper mid-card as he formed a tag team with the returning Haku, the two having a brief TV feud with the Brothers of Destruction in the weeks that followed, but never managing to get a big pay-per-view match against them. In fact, at WrestleMania 17, the crown jewel of the Attitude Era, and a show that's still regarded by many to be the greatest wrestling pay-per-view ever put on, Rikishi didn't even make it onto the card. A sad indictment of just how far he had fallen in such a short space of time. When he did eventually get a match against The Undertaker, it was on the May 3, 2001 episode of Raw, one which ended up going to another no contest. After this, it was clear that if the company wanted to salvage the big man, they would have to turn him babyface again, so they did just that on the next week's show, having him deliver a stink face to Stephanie McMahon after she cost him a match against Steve Austin. Maybe this would have been enough to reheat the once hugely popular star and bring him back to the level he'd been at during the summer of 2000, but we'll never be sure of that unfortunately, because soon after this, the new babyface suffered a shoulder injury, taking him out of action until December 2001. And when he did come back, it quickly became clear that the moment had passed, as he was never able to recapture the same magic from before. It wasn't for lack of trying though. In fact, on his first night back, he even got a huge pop when he delivered a stink face to Vince McMahon himself, from there being drafted over to SmackDown where he would feud with Billy and Chuck. This led to a situation where, in an attempt to screw the big man over, the team's manager Rico would become a surprise partner for Rikishi in a tag title match soon after this, the stylist hoping that he could give his clients an easy night in the process. Despite the odds being against him though, the former Intercontinental Champion would end up winning all by himself, this making him and Rico unlikely tag team champions for a short period. After that, he was the first person to face Hulk Hogan upon his return to WWE in 2002, with the San Francisco boy even getting to give the stink face to the Hulkster after the match. From there, however, his time with the company began to wind down as the creative team struggled to come up with new storylines for him. This seeing the once hugely popular babyface be largely missing from TV throughout the rest of the year and into 2003. Of the few notable things he did at that time, the most memorable was probably his brief feud with Roddy Piper and his surrogate Sean O'Haire, something sparked by Piper's infamous coconut attack on Jimmy Snuka decades prior. Aside from that, there was a brief run with the tag team titles when Rikishi teamed with his old partner Scotty 2 Hotty once again, but that was largely it. And so, on July 16, 2004, he was released from his contract after reportedly failing to lose the weight the company had requested he do so on numerous occasions. From that point on, he would never return to WWE as a full-time superstar, instead working the indie circuits for a couple of years under the legally distinct name of Kishi, going as far as Italy, Japan, and Mexico before returning stateside in 2007 to have a brief stint in TNA, where he would work under the moniker of Junior Fatu. And while in TNA, Junior would get to work matches against the likes of Christian Cage, Christopher Daniels, and Robert Roode, however, never managed to make a major splash and ended up leaving altogether after having a pay dispute with management just a month later. Since then, he's largely stayed away from the ring, choosing instead to retire and let the next generation of the Anoa'i family take up the mantle, primarily his children Jonathan and Joshua, who have gone on to maybe even greater fame than their father as Jimmy and Jey Uso, one of the most successful WWE tag teams since the Attitude Era. That said, he has still made the odd appearance on WWE TV since his quiet retirement, inducting his cousin Yokozuna into the Hall of Fame in 2012, and then making an in-ring cameo on an episode of Raw soon after that to deliver a Samoan spike and a bonsai drop to Heath Slater, these moves being tributes to both Yoko and Rikishi's late brother Umaga. After that moment, he even got to dance for the fans once more, this time doing so with his sons in a feel-good moment. And if that wasn't enough, in February of 2015, the big man even made one final appearance with Too Cool, teaming with them to defeat 3MB in a six-man match on an episode of Raw. As for his in-ring career though, that seems to be it, a decision that was solidified when just 1 month later he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame himself, immortalizing the work he's done forever. And he certainly deserved this because while he never quite reached the pinnacle he should have, there was a period in the late 90s where Rikishi was one of the hottest stars in the company. No mean feat considering the level of talent they had on the roster at that point. So when you think about the great Samoans in wrestling, think about The Rock, Roman Reigns, Samoa Joe, Yokozuna, and the countless others, but don't forget to save a spot for Rikishi, the one with the best moves of them all. Well guys, what did you think of the video? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, as well as follow Wrestle with Andy on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.